The IRS accused of a cover-up. Why Republicans believe the tax agency intentionally hid evidence. President Obama promotes free trade in Vietnam. Some lawmakers think he should be pushing for improved human rights instead. New insight about our Pope Emeritus. We're learning more about Benedict XVI from someone who knows him well. And Catholic bishops release a new marriage video. It spotlights freedom to express what we believe about the sacrament. Those stories and more on EWTN News Nightly for Tuesday, May 24th, 2016. Good evening from Washington. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Brian Patrick. A leading House Republican wants the IRS chief impeached. Representative Jason Chaffetz says John Koskinen lied to lawmakers investigating his agency. Wyatt Goolsbee joining us from Capitol Hill with that story. Wyatt?
Brian, Representative Chaffetz and 73 other House Republicans are kicking off an effort to impeach the head of the IRS. John Koskinen was a no-show at today's hearing, which is adding even more fuel to the fire.
I've heard from IRS agents who have been furious privately to see the kind of corruption and dishonesty that has overwhelmed the top of the Internal Revenue Service.
Today's House Judiciary hearing got heated as Republicans called for John Koskinen to be impeached. Democrats accused the GOP of grandstanding.
Let's remember, this is not even an impeachment hearing. What we're doing today does absolutely nothing to bring truth to light.
The IRS has conceded that it treated conservative groups seeking tax-exempt status unfairly earlier this decade. Chaffetz chairs the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee, one of the panels that has investigated the IRS. The Utah Republican says the IRS chief never provided investigators with subpoenaed evidence. He also says Koskinen lied about thousands of emails that were destroyed.
When Congress issues a subpoena, compliance is not optional. Imagine if a taxpayer failed to comply with an IRS summons or subpoena. What would they do to you?
Booting Koskinen has become a symbolic cause among conservatives, but there is virtually no chance of Koskinen's being ousted, as high-ranking Republican senators say they will not impeach him. Democrats say Republicans are using the IRS as a political punching bag. Chaffetz disagrees.
It really shouldn't be partisan. You can't destroy documents. You can't mislead Congress. You can't lie to Congress. And we'll see if, when administrations change at some point, if they feel the same way.
Republicans who want to impeach the IRS chief fault him for not providing all the emails by Lois Lerner. She oversaw the IRS office that handled all of the applications for tax-exempt status. Lerner was eventually held in contempt of Congress and eventually retired. Brian?
All right, Wyatt Goolsbee at the Capitol. Thank you, Wyatt. Other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. President Obama pushes for his signature trade agreement in Vietnam as critics say he should be pushing for human rights. Chief White House correspondent and political director Lauren Ashburn reports.
Brian, Vietnam is one of Southeast Asia's fastest growing economies and has a lot to gain from the trade agreement. But many U.S. critics say the deal is bad for the American economy. President Obama lands in Vietnam's manufacturing hub, Ho Chi Minh City, formerly Saigon. At the top of his agenda, the U.S.-led Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP, signed by 12 countries, including Vietnam.
I want you to know that as President of the United States, I strongly support TPP because you'll also be able to buy more of our goods, made in America. Now, here in Vietnam, TPP will let you sell more of your products to the world, and it will attract new investment.
The TPP is designed to lower tariffs so Vietnam and other countries can export more products to the U.S., mainly clothing and shoes. Today, in a meeting with activists, including pastors, disabled, and free speech advocates, the president said the agreement will help improve human rights by providing higher wages and safer working conditions. One major stumbling block: TPP is stalled in Congress, and both leading presidential candidates oppose it. Critics say if it goes through, U.S. companies would manufacture goods in other countries, taking jobs out of the U.S. At an entrepreneurship event, the president continued to push the deal. The next stop for the president is Japan, where he will make a historic visit to Hiroshima. Brian?
Lauren Ashburn at the White House. Thank you, Lauren. Republican Congressman Chris Smith calls today President Obama's arms deal with Vietnam an epic failure of diplomacy. It fully lifts a ban on selling arms to that communist nation. Even some Democrats are critical.
I think this was premature. It was ill-advised. I am very disappointed that we've lost yet another opportunity to elicit any kind of commitment from the Vietnamese government on improving the human rights of the Vietnamese people. By any measure, Vietnam has made no recent progress towards respecting the rights of its own citizens.
Activists joined the lawmakers today calling for human rights protections and freedom for prisoners jailed in Iran, some of them for their faith. Remember the chaos that erupted in the House last week after a gay rights amendment was voted down? Speaker Paul Ryan is now taking steps to avoid House floor surprises. We go back to the Capitol where Jason Calvi reports. Jason?
Brian, Speaker Ryan laid out this proposal behind closed doors with Republicans today. It is intended to stop the surprises that we saw last week.
Not one of those members who apparently changed their vote because it kept changing on the board came to this well and had the courage to change from green to red or red to green. How is that possible, Mr. Speaker?
A gay rights amendment was about to pass, but 7 Republicans changed votes. The amendment failed by just 1 vote. GOP lawmakers said the amendment caught them by surprise. That prompted Ryan's proposed change that now amendments need to be printed and submitted ahead of time, which an aide says is still being discussed. Democrats have criticized Ryan's proposal today. They say it now gives Republican leaders even more time to try to squash controversial amendments. Brian?
Thank you for reporting from the Capitol. Dozens of Democrats call on Speaker Paul Ryan to disband the select panel investigating fetal tissue donation and Planned Parenthood. The representatives call the investigation reckless, telling Ryan, the onus is on you to put an end to this witch hunt. You cannot continue to turn a blind eye to the serious risks presented by the panel and still claim to fulfill your responsibilities as Speaker. The select panel was created following the release of undercover Planned Parenthood videos. It's investigating whether abortion providers are illegally profiting from the sale of aborted baby parts. Well, the man at the center of those undercover Planned Parenthood videos accuses prosecutors of misconduct. David Delyden's attorney says the Harris County, Texas District Attorney's Office illegally shared evidence with Planned Parenthood. The Thomas More Society says a Planned Parenthood attorney admitted the breach. The Texas Attorney General had warned the DA not to share that raw video. The Veterans Affairs Secretary takes heat for his recent comments on a VA healthcare wait line scandal. Robert McDonald compared long waits at VA health sites to waiting in line at Disney theme parks. Speaker Paul Ryan stopped short of calling for McDonald's resignation.
To show the kind of absolute, these kinds of disgusting comments that show you do not have the proper empathy needs to be addressed. And I don't know how he's going to fix it, but he needs to fix it.
Missouri Republican Senator Roy Blunt calls McDonald's comments, quote, a clear sign that new leadership is needed. No immediate comment tonight from the VA. Well, the push to speed up airport security lines just cost one man his job. Kelly Hagen served as the head of security operations at the Transportation Security Administration. He was fired after criticism from a congressional committee. Lawmakers complain people are standing in long lines, sometimes missing their flights because the TSA is not doing its job properly. The mayor of Atlanta, home to the world's busiest airport, says the problem needs to be solved quickly.
If it's a TSA issue, if it's a homeland security, let's partner together, but let's come forward with the most aggressive approach that we can have.
TSA says it's hiring more workers and approving more overtime, but it cannot compromise security. Lawmakers work on a bipartisan bill to overhaul regulations for dangerous chemicals. This could lead to the first significant change since the Toxic Substances Control Act was passed 40 years ago. The White House supports the bill. It would require the Environmental Protection Agency to evaluate chemicals based on new standards. Those are designed to better protect children and pregnant women. Investigators believe new evidence supports a theory that a bomb caused the crash of Egypt Air Flight 804. A senior Egyptian forensics expert says human remains recovered from the crash site have tiny burns on them. Those burns are consistent with an onboard explosion. All 66 people on the flight from Paris to Cairo were killed as the plane went down in the Mediterranean Sea. They were remembered with a candlelight vigil this weekend. A Pennsylvania judge rules comedian Bill Cosby must stand trial for sexual assault. Cosby faces more than a dozen accusations that he drugged and then molested women. This is the first case to lead to criminal charges. Cosby faces up to 10 years in prison if he is convicted. A federal judge orders Ohio to continue providing certain funding to Planned Parenthood. This while he weighs a challenge to a new state law aimed at keeping public money from going to that abortion provider. Planned Parenthood says it's being denied funds in retaliation for providing abortions and claims that is unconstitutional. Another federal judge says Portland, Maine cannot use its noise law to restrict pro-life protest outside a Planned Parenthood clinic. Pastor Andrew March, represented by the Thomas More Society, claims he was unlawfully targeted because of his views. The judge in this case ruled there are other options police have, including disorderly conduct and harassment statutes, if they are applied to all protest groups. Well, he has stayed in the background for more than 3 years, but Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI again makes news. Ed Penton, Rome correspondent for EWTN's National Catholic Register, is joining us. Ed, Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI personal secretary offered some insight recently that you wrote about. What did Archbishop Georg Genswein say about Benedict's resignation?
First of all, Brian, he said that certain theories that have been said that regarding his resignation were unfounded. He said that VatiLeaks, for example, the leaking of confidential paper documents had little or nothing to do with Benedict's resignation. And he also talked about a dramatic struggle, as he called it, in the 2005 conclave, during which various cardinals of the so-called St. Gallen group of adversaries who didn't want Benedict elected fought strongly to not have him elected. So those are quite some strong revelations that he gave.
And how does the Archbishop describe the unique situation that we're in at the Vatican, where Francis and Benedict are basically neighbors?
Yeah, this was quite interesting too, because he talks about, he stressed that there aren't two popes, but there is one pope, and that's Francis, but there is the Petrine ministry, if you like, is slightly different, and he calls it the fact that Benedict is the contemplative side of the Petrine ministry and Francis is the active part. And this is obviously quite revolutionary, really, in terms of the Petrine ministry. He said it's not like the previous abdication of a pope, Pope Celestine V. It's quite different to that. So this is going to be a topic, I think, of some discussion going forward.
And didn't he say that we may see Benedict XVI for a special occasion next month?
Yes, that's right. On June the 29th, it's his 65th anniversary of his priestly ordination. And I think the rumor is, at least, that he's going to appear at the Mass on that day. And so he'll give an appearance. He has appeared at various times in public, although he took a vow of silence and privacy. But I think he's wanting to show himself to the public on that day, the 65th anniversary of his priestly ordination.
It would be special to see him on that very special day. Ed Penton, Rome correspondent for the National Catholic Register. Thank you, Ed.
Thanks, Brian.
Coming up, changes at Facebook as the social media site responds to conservatives' concerns. And remembering Justice Scalia. His friends on the Supreme Court describe how he's missed. Today's closing bell as stocks surge. Tech and financial stocks lead the way, powered by strong new home sales. The Dow Jones Industrial Average closed up 213 points. The Nasdaq jumped 95. The S&P 500 gained 28. Thanks for joining us this Tuesday evening. I'm Brian Patrick. Conservative backlash against Facebook leads to changes at that social media site. Facebook says it's changing the way it supplies its trending topics section. Conservatives complained their stories were improperly ignored. Now Facebook says it's dropping its reliance on news outlets such as the Wall Street Journal, Huffington Post, and the Drudge Report to determine what gets posted as a trending topic. Facebook outlined the change in a letter sent to Republican Senator John Thune. He chairs the Commerce Committee, which oversees the Internet and consumer protections. The move comes less than a week after a Facebook founder, Mark Zuckerberg, met with more than a dozen conservative commentators. Louisiana is poised to become the first state to expand its hate crime law to protect police, firefighters, and emergency medical crews. If signed into law, a recently passed Blue Lives Matter bill allows prosecutors to seek additional penalties against anyone convicted of intentionally targeting first responders because of their profession. Critics say this could weaken current hate crime statutes and stir up the national debate over the relationship between law enforcement and minorities. Supreme Court justices remember the late Antonin Scalia. Even though their ideology was sharply different, often opposed, Scalia earned deep respect from his colleagues.
Once asked how we could be friends given our disagreement on lots of things, Justice Scalia answered, "I attack ideas, I don't attack people. Some very good people have some very bad ideas."
We all miss him. I miss him. I said, I'm very honest about it today. I said, you know, he was he was alive and a force. It's important to have people who think different things. It's important to have people who express them well. We still do. But he was awfully good at expressing his point of view. And I miss that. And I think we all do miss that.
Justices Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Stephen Breyer spoke at the Burton Awards ceremony at the Library of Congress here in Washington, D.C. A new report on aging says there's a link between health care and housing needs of America's seniors. Dr. Anand Parekh, senior advisor to the Bipartisan Policy Center, helped author that report. So it recommends that seniors should age in place. What does that mean and how is it accomplished?
What that means is essentially that most seniors want to age in their homes and communities. In fact, AARP did a 2014 survey and found 88% of seniors want to age in their current residence, 89% want to stay in their communities. What this report calls for is that every community should allow individuals to age with options.
So by the year 2030, more than 20% of the American population will be seniors, including myself. Are we prepared as a nation for this?
We need to do more. We need to ensure our housing stock is adequate. We need to make sure communities have services that are located close by seniors. We also realize that 68% of Medicare beneficiaries today have multiple chronic conditions, resulting in 93% of Medicare costs. 70% of seniors also will need long-term services and supports to help them with activities like bathing, dressing, and eating. So we need to make sure we have services that help individuals manage their chronic conditions and prevent further disease and illness.
We have made huge strides in technology. Is there the technology available to make this possible for so many seniors to live more independently longer?
We did a survey of health and aging and housing stakeholders and found that telehealth and telemedicine, so virtual ways to connect with your healthcare provider, as well as remote monitoring, are two very effective technologies that individuals are hungry for. Our report calls for recommendations to scale up those technologies.
What type of housing do you recommend for this aging population?
You know, so there isn't one particular type. Many individuals will want to live in their homes. So we think that those homes ought to be modified. There are a lot of low-cost modifications that can be done in homes. Many other individuals will want to downsize or right-size into a smaller house. Many others with chronic conditions or disabilities will want to be at a place where they can receive services, so supportive housing. So there's not one particular place. Every senior, older adult needs to look at what's best for them.
And certainly it's something we need to plan for, and really an interesting report. Healthy aging begins at home. Dr. Anand Parekh, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Brian. Thank you.
Up next, celebrating family bonds. Catholic bishops shine a light on the sacrament of marriage. And the miracle hunter tells us about visions of Mary now declared worthy of belief. Today, May 24th, is the Feast of Mary, Help of Christians. That title is associated with the defense of 16th century Christian Europe from the Islamic Ottoman Empire through praying the Rosary. Thank you for joining us this Tuesday evening. I'm Brian Patrick. A visionary in Argentina claims to have seen almost daily visions of Our Lady of the Rosary over a period of 7 years. The local bishop now declares those claims worthy of belief. Michael O'Neill, known as the Miracle Hunter, is a well-researched expert on Marian apparitions. Michael's Skyping with us from Chicago. Michael, give us an idea of the developments from San Nicolas, Argentina this weekend.
Well, we had some very exciting news in the apparition world, which is that in San Nicolas, Argentina, the bishop there, Hector Cardelli, gave a statement in which he approved some apparitions that happened from 1983 to 1990 as supernatural. So this is beyond just the messages have no problems regarding faith and morals. This is him declaring it to be a supernatural event. So it joins the likes of Lourdes, Fatima, and Guadalupe.
So how is this series of reported apparitions unique from some of these other approved visionaries or visions that you've reported on?
So if you look throughout history, you can look at the data, and it shows that the average number of apparitions that happen or messages that are given are something like 10 or 12. And in Fatima, Lourdes, Guadalupe, it's a very small number. When we look at these messages of Our Lady of the Rosary in San Nicolas, Argentina, there were over 1,800 messages over the course of 7 years. So that's pretty unique in the history of apparitions.
A lot of material to go through. Is there any common theme in those messages?
Well, they're similar to a lot of the other approved apparitions throughout history, messages of peace, of conversion, of return to the sacraments, always drawing people closer to Christ. However, there are some dire warnings saying that humanity is in great trouble. However, Our Lady has said that Jesus will win the day in the end. So it's a positive message, but there is sort of some concern expressed in those messages.
So is there a next step, or is this it?
This is the final step. According to canon law and the 1978 document, which is the Norms of the Congregation for Discerning Private Revelation, it says that the local bishop is the final authority in these matters. The Vatican can, in fact, put an extra layer of recognition with a basilica, a feast day canonization of a visionary, but this is all that's needed for the faithful to really engage in this.
And finally, Michael, why do we honor Mary in a special way during May and October, and what's some of the best ways of doing that?
Well, of course, May is the month of Mary, and there have been many apparitions, including Our Lady of Fatima, which began on May 13th. And of course, October is the month of Mary, the month of the Rosary, and we have the famous Battle of Lepanto and other various times Our Lady has interceded through the Rosary in October. So that's that reason. And throughout May, we can celebrate Mary with May crownings and praying the Rosary with family and friends and really honoring her in a special way this month.
Michael O'Neill, Skyping with us from Chicago. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
And the Archbishop of Dublin hopes Pope Francis will come to Ireland for the 2018 World Meeting of Families. Archbishop Diarmuid Martin told reporters today he also hopes Francis can visit Northern Ireland. Pope John Paul II apparently wanted to but couldn't because of the security situation at that time. The Archbishop says Pope Francis has expressed a desire to come.
The Church in Ireland would be very happy if you were to come, and Catholics in Ireland would be very happy if you were to come. But the World Meeting of Families has an importance all its own and shouldn't be totally dependent on one aspect or another.
The next World Meeting of Families is scheduled for August of 2018. A new marriage video is just released by the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. Made for Freedom features personal stories illustrating the importance of marriage to society. It also addresses the need for people to have the freedom to express their beliefs about marriage.
So marriage is much bigger than simply my decision, my life, my family. It has far-reaching implications that affect culture at large. We've seen a growing trend in recent years where adult desires are prioritized over the needs of children. When you focus on the needs of desires, you essentially commodify the child. And this is detrimental not only to the children's well-being, but to the family and to the culture at large.
The thread that connects us all as human beings is the fact that everybody comes from a mother and a father. And if you tweak that, you're robbing us of our humanity.
The video states that if marriage is redefined, then you also redefine parenthood. Until tomorrow, for the EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Brian Patrick. Thanks for joining us. Good night. God bless.